The bar floated above the neon city of Vetra Prime, glowing like a jewel in the endless night. It was a place where rich aliens came to forget rules, drink rare poisons, and laugh at the weaker species that served them. And tonight, laughter filled the room. Loud, cruel laughter. A young human waiter, Eli, moved quietly between tables. He carried shining glasses filled with blue mist that glowed in the dark. His hands never shook. His face never changed. To him, this was just another long night. But to one alien girl, he was entertainment. Her name was Zira Vel, daughter of an ambassador from the core worlds. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes were bright green, full of mischief and too much drink. She slammed her glass on the table and called out, her voice echoing across the bar. "Hey, human! Bring me another one. Make it strong, maybe it will help you grow a spine." The crowd of aliens around her laughed. They loved seeing humans humiliated. Humans were rare now. Servants in alien colonies, a once powerful species reduced to workers and pets. Eli didn't answer. He just walked over, calm as still water, and poured another drink. Zira leaned forward. "You're quiet, aren't you? Do humans even speak anymore?" Eli looked at her. His eyes were brown, ordinary, almost soft. "Only when we have something worth saying," he said softly. The crowd went silent for a moment. The way he spoke, too calm, too confident. Zira laughed it off. "Oh, the pet bites back." She stood up, wobbling slightly. "You think you're better than us, human? You think humans still matter?" Eli didn't move. "We used to," he said. "Once." Her smile turned sharp. "Used to, that's the point. Now you serve drinks." She pressed her glowing wristband and a small hologram appeared, a picture of Earth, gray and dead. "Your homeworld is dust. Your people vanished. You are just leftovers, human." The audience chuckled, but Eli didn't react. He simply looked at the image for a long second. "Maybe," he whispered, "but ashes can still burn." Something in his tone made her step back. His voice wasn't angry. It was quiet. Too quiet, like the calm before a storm. Zira rolled her eyes. "Whatever. You're lucky we even let you live here." She turned to her friends. "Watch this." She reached out and yanked the collar around Eli's neck, a silver control band used for human servants. "How does it feel, pet?" "To be owned," she taunted. The collar beeped. Energy pulsed through it. But then something strange happened. The device shorted, sparks flying. The lights flickered. The air felt heavy. Eli slowly raised his head. For the first time, Zira saw his eyes glow faint red under the dim light. Just for a second. Then the glow vanished. Zira froze. Her laughter died in her throat. The other aliens noticed it too. "Was that?" one whispered. Before anyone could speak again, Eli stepped back and bowed politely. "Your drink, miss," he said. Then he turned and walked away. The moment he left the room, the bar's sound returned. Music, laughter, chatter. But something invisible had changed. The air felt colder. Later that night, Zira stumbled outside. Rain fell softly, glowing blue under the city's floating lights. She was still half drunk, but her mind kept replaying what she saw. Those eyes, that tone. The broken collar. She rubbed her arm. "Maybe I imagined it," she muttered. A small service drone floated near her and beeped, scanning for tips. She waved it off and walked down the empty street. But halfway through, she noticed something strange. Security alarms in the distance, people shouting. When she reached the corner, she froze. The bar she had just left was on fire. Glass and smoke spilled into the street. Alien guards ran around shouting orders. "Contain the flames." "Where's the human worker?" No one could find Eli. Zira's heart began to race. She pushed through the crowd. Inside, tables were overturned. Metal walls melted as if from extreme heat. Security cameras sparked and died. The manager, a fat blue alien, shouted in panic. "He just vanished." 1 second he was here, then the power died, and then boom. Zira swallowed. "You mean Eli? The human?" The manager glared at her. "Yes, him." "What did you do to him?" Nothing, I just..." Her voice broke. She looked down at her wristband. The hologram of Earth flickered again, and then glitched, showing a red warning sign. "Unauthorized access detected." A whisper passed through the crowd. Did she provoke it? "What is he?" "Humans can't do that." Zira backed away. No, that's impossible." But somewhere deep inside, fear started to bloom. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Calm, unreadable, and those faint red eyes burning in the dark. She tried searching his employee record. The data was locked. Access denied. She hacked again using her family clearance. Still denied. Then a final message appeared on the screen. Warning. File restricted by the Galactic Council. Unauthorized search detected. Her heart stopped. Why would the Council hide the record of a human waiter? The system suddenly froze and a single line of text appeared before her eyes. You shouldn't have done that, Zira. She gasped and jumped back from the console. Who said that? The lights in her room flickered. Her window reflected her face, and behind her, for just a heartbeat, another reflection. Eli's, eyes glowing red. She turned around fast. Nothing there. Silence. Only the faint echo of his voice in her mind. Ashes can still burn. The next morning, Vetra Prime was covered in gray mist. The floating city looked calm again, but the calm was a lie. Every news screen showed the same headline. Explosion at Silver Vein Bar, cause unknown. Human worker missing. Zira sat alone in her apartment watching the footage. Her head still ached from last night's drinks, but her mind was clear. Too clear. The video looped again and again. Bright lights, smoke, screaming aliens running out. The report said the explosion came from the power core under the bar, but Zira knew better. She had seen what started it. She had seen his eyes. Zira whispered to herself, "No human can do that." But the memory didn't fade. The red glow. The broken collar. The sudden silence before the blast. Something inside Eli had awakened. Something old, dangerous, and powerful. Hours later, security forces sealed off the bar. Zira wasn't supposed to be there, but she used her family ID to sneak in. The place looked worse in daylight. Black walls, melted steel, and glass fused into strange shapes. The air still smelled like burnt ozone. She found the table where Eli had stood. The metal was bent outward, as if a huge wave of energy had exploded from one single point. Zira knelt down and touched the floor. It was warm. "Impossible," she whispered. A robotic officer turned to her. "Authorized personnel only, miss." She showed her ambassador badge. "Zira Vel, I was here last night. I might know something about the missing human." The robot scanned her ID and stepped aside. "You have 5 minutes." Zira moved deeper into the ruins. She saw a cracked control collar lying near the counter, Eli's collar. The energy cell inside it was completely drained. Its circuits melted. That wasn't from overuse. That was from power overload. Her chest tightened. "What are you, Eli?" Later that day, Zira went to her father's office in the Central Embassy Tower. The building floated high above the clouds, guarded by drones and soldiers. Her father, Ambassador Vel, was one of the most powerful alien diplomats on Vetra Prime. He sat behind a desk made of glass and light, speaking with someone through a hologram. When he saw Zira, he ended the call immediately. "Zira," he said, his tone sharp. "You were at the Silver Vein last night, weren't you?" She froze. "How do you—" "Security cameras saw you," he interrupted. "You humiliated a human servant in public, and now the bar is gone. You've caused a diplomatic incident." Zira frowned. "You think I destroyed it?" "No, but whoever that human was, he's now wanted by the Galactic Council. They've already erased his record." Zira's eyes widened. "Erased? Why would they do that?" Ambassador Vel sighed. "Because some secrets are not meant for public eyes. Forget him, Zira, forget what you saw," but she couldn't. Something deep in her mind refused to let go. That night, Zira returned home. She sat by her window staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, Eli was running. She opened her datapad again, trying to bypass the locked files. After hours of hacking, she finally found a trace, a file name hidden in the memory. Project Genesis, subject E13. Her heart raced. She opened it, but the screen went black. Then a single video clip appeared. Zira clicked play, static. Then a voice, calm, low, human. "If you are watching this, you found what they tried to bury." The camera showed a laboratory. Inside a glass pod floated a man, human, strong, silent. Project Genesis, the voice continued, was meant to create humans who could survive any planet, any war. But the Council feared them. They shut it down and killed everyone who knew. Zira's hands shook. Subject E13 showed unusual control over energy and matter, the recording said. He could generate power without any external source. Some called it evolution. Others called it a curse. Then the screen flickered and Eli's face appeared. The same calm eyes. The same quiet voice. "Zyra, you shouldn't be watching this." Her breath caught in her throat. "Eli?" The image leaned closer as if he could see her through the screen. "They're tracking you now," he said. "Leave the city. Forget me." The screen went black. Zyra's datapad started to smoke. She dropped it on the floor where it burned itself into ashes. 2 hours later, alarms echoed through the streets. Military ships flew across the city sky. News alerts flashed everywhere. Wanted, human male, suspected terrorist. Codename, E13. Reward 50,000 credits for information. Zyra's heart pounded. She knew this wasn't just a manhunt. This was a cover-up. She rushed to the elevator, heading to the docks. She had to find him before they did. The lower city was chaos, flashing lights, police scanners, and patrol drones scanning every face. Zyra pulled her hood over her head and slipped through the crowd. She checked every terminal, every flight record, but there was no sign of Eli. Then she noticed something, a message carved on the metal wall beside a docking gate. It looked burned in, glowing faint red. Just one word, "Run." Her breath stopped. She turned around, and for a moment she thought she saw him standing in the crowd. The same brown jacket, the same calm eyes watching her from a distance. But when she blinked, he was gone. Zyra took a deep breath and looked at the empty street. Something inside her changed that day. She no longer saw Eli as a servant or a joke. Now he was a mystery, a dangerous one, and deep down she knew one thing. If the Council feared him this much, then maybe humans were never as weak as everyone believed. As she walked away far above the clouds in the shadows of the floating city, Eli stood alone on a tower edge. The wind whipped through his hair. His eyes glowed faint red again. He looked down at his hand. Energy rippled through his veins like lightning. He whispered to himself, "They started this, but I will finish it." 3 days had passed since the explosion, but the city of Vetra Prime still buzzed with fear. Every screen, every corner, every public announcement repeated the same words. "Wanted human fugitive E13. Approach with caution." Zyra kept her hood low as she moved through the crowded market tunnels beneath the floating city. Patrol drones hovered above, scanning faces with cold blue light. She could feel their eyes on her back. She wasn't supposed to be out here, but she had no choice. She had to find Eli before the Council did. Zyra slipped into a narrow alley. The sound of the crowd faded, replaced by the hum of old generators and dripping pipes. She stopped in front of a small metal door and pressed her hand on the scanner. It clicked open. Inside was a dusty room filled with glowing data screens and scattered tools. The small alien with 4 eyes looked up from behind a monitor. "Zyra," he said nervously. "You shouldn't be here." "They're watching everyone." "Then make it fast, Rin," she replied. "I need to track a signal. Human, male, no implant ID, possibly moving through off-grid stations." Rin blinked all 4 eyes. "You're serious?" "The Council declared any human-related data restricted. They'll trace this search in seconds." Zyra pulled a chip from her coat and tossed it on the table. "Encrypted, use this. It'll hide your trace for 5 minutes. Rin sighed. 5 minutes to break galactic law. You humans really make trouble even when you're not here. Zyra glared. Just do it. The screens flickered as Rin began typing. Symbols flashed by, codes, maps, and signal traces. The air felt tense. Then a faint line appeared on the holographic map. A signal moving slowly between sectors. There, Rin pointed. Docking route 27B, cargo ship Seraphine. Left Vetra Prime 2 hours ago. Destination unknown. Zyra stared at the screen. He's leaving the system. Zyra, Rin warned. Whoever he is, the Council doesn't want him alive. And if you go after him, they'll come for you too. She turned to leave. Then they'll have to catch me first. As she stepped out, Rin whispered, You're starting to sound like him. Zyra reached the docking bay just as security gates began to close. Massive ships rose into the sky, their engines glowing blue. The Seraphine was already far ahead, disappearing into the dark clouds above. She clenched her fists. Too late. A voice behind her said, Not yet. She spun around. It was a tall figure in a black uniform, his badge shining gold. Galactic security. His eyes were cold, his face half hidden by a visor. Zyra, he said. You are under investigation for tampering with restricted files. Step away from the gate. Zyra's heart raced. I didn't do anything wrong. He tilted his head. You accessed a banned project. You made contact with E13, you know where he's going. I don't, she said quickly. The officer reached for her wrist, but before he could touch her, a sudden surge of light flashed from the gate's console. The power grid sparked and overloaded. Alarm screamed. The officer stumbled back. What? Zyra stared in shock. The console's screen had burned a single word into its display. Run. She didn't think twice. She ran. Zyra dove into a maintenance tunnel as soldiers shouted behind her. She slid down a narrow shaft, landing hard on a metal floor below. The sound of boots echoed above. She crawled through darkness until she found a broken vent leading outside. Cold wind hit her face. The city stretched below her like a sea of lights. Eli, she whispered. You're still watching me, aren't you? A faint red light flickered in the distance, a signal blinking on and off from a communication tower across the city. It blinked 3 times, paused, then blinked once. A code, a message. Zyra recognized it. It was the same pattern used by human rebels decades ago. Meet me. Midnight. Old docks. When midnight came, Zyra stood at the edge of the abandoned docks. The fog rolled in thick, covering everything in silver mist. The sea below glowed faintly from the city's neon reflection. No guards, no drones. Just silence, then she felt it, a strange pull in the air. A static hum like electricity crawling under her skin. She turned slowly. Eli was standing behind her. He looked the same. Calm, quiet, but different too. His clothes were torn, his eyes dim red under the fog. Power pulsed faintly through his veins like glowing threads. Zyra took a step back. You're alive, he nodded. You shouldn't have followed me. I had to. The council's hunting you. They think you're dangerous, he looked away. They're right, Zyra frowned. What are you talking about? Eli stared at the water. They made us this way. Long ago, when humans were still free, they ran experiments, trying to make us stronger, faster, harder to kill. But they couldn't control what they created, so they destroyed it. They destroyed us, Zyra felt a chill. You mean Project Genesis, Eli nodded. And I was the last survivor. A low rumble shook the air, distant engines. Zyra looked up. Dozens of ships appeared through the fog, their spotlights cutting across the docks. The council had found them. Eli's eyes flared. They traced you, Zyra panicked. I didn't mean to. He grabbed her hand. Doesn't matter. We move. Now. They ran across the platform as beams of light followed them. Energy bolts hit the ground, exploding metal and smoke around them. Zyra tripped, but Eli pulled her up easily. He wasn't just strong, he was fast, almost inhuman. Every time a bolt came close, he turned and absorbed the energy with his hand, sending it flying back in a burst of red light. The soldiers hesitated. He's using energy manipulation. That's impossible. Eli's eyes burned brighter. It's time they remember what humans can do. He raised his hand and the entire dock shook. Energy from the ships bent toward him, metal screaming as it twisted in midair. Then everything went white. When Zyra opened her eyes, the ships were gone, destroyed or scattered. The dock was silent again. Eli stood in the center, surrounded by floating sparks. He turned to her. Now you know why they fear me. Zyra couldn't speak. She looked around at the fire, the smoke, the destruction, and then back at him. You're not just human, she whispered. Eli's voice was low. No, I'm what comes after. As the mist cleared, a small tracking drone floated nearby, watching them from afar. Its camera zoomed in, recording everything. A voice on the other end spoke coldly. Subject E13 confirmed. Target accompanied by Zyra. Authorization granted. Send the hunters. The world was silent after the blast. Only smoke and dust floated above the ruins of the dock. The ships were gone, vaporized by energy so powerful that even the air shimmered. Zyra stood frozen, staring at the destruction around her. Her ears rang, her heart raced. She turned slowly toward Eli, who stood in the center of the wreckage. His chest rose and fell slowly, his skin faintly glowing under the dim light. Eli, she whispered. How did you do that? He looked at his hand. It was trembling, not from fear, but exhaustion. I didn't do it, he said quietly. It just happens. When I lose control. Zyra stared. You destroyed 10 council ships. You think that's losing control? Eli's eyes met hers. You think this is power? No. It's the reason my people were erased. They moved quickly after that, escaping through maintenance tunnels leading out of the city. The air grew colder, darker. Every step echoed in the silence. When they finally reached the surface level, far below the floating city, Zira saw the old ruins of the world that lay beneath. Broken towers, forgotten roads and shadows of the past. Eli stopped beside a collapsed statue of a human soldier. Moss covered the stone. The soldier's face was gone, but the word Earth was still carved on the base. Zira frowned. Why bring me here? Eli's voice was calm but heavy, because this is where it started. You wanted the truth, didn't you? Then look around. This is what happens when the council fears something. They entered an old facility, its doors half buried in dirt. Eli placed his hand on the metal wall, and it opened with a hiss. Zira blinked. How did you, He didn't answer. He just walked inside. The hallway glowed faintly with emergency lights that had somehow lasted for centuries. Machines hummed quietly. Dust floated in the still air. Zira followed, her boots echoing softly on the floor. What is this place? She asked. A research base, Eli said. One of the last from old Earth. They built us here. Zira froze. Built you? He nodded slowly. Not all humans were born natural. Some of us were made to survive anything. They entered a large chamber filled with transparent pods. Hundreds of them, each one dark and silent. Inside, Zira saw shapes, human shapes, and still floating, unmoving, as if sleeping. Her voice trembled. Are they alive? Eli stepped closer to one pod. Frost covered the glass. He wiped it away, revealing the face of a young woman inside. Peaceful, still breathing faintly. Cryosleep, he said. They've been like this for over 200 years. Zira's throat went dry. 200? That's impossible, Eli looked up. Nothing is impossible when you fear extinction. Zira walked slowly between the pods, staring at the faces. Men, women, even children, all human, all forgotten. Why didn't anyone tell us? She whispered. The council said humans died during the cataclysm. Eli's expression darkened. They lied. The cataclysm wasn't nature's fault. It was theirs. The council used orbital strikes to burn the Earth, to erase our history. They said it was for peace, but it was for control. He clenched his fists. They wanted humanity to vanish so the galaxy would never fear us again. Zira looked at him, eyes wide with disbelief. But why fear you? You're not monsters. Eli turned to her slowly. Aren't we? You saw what I did. You saw what happens when I stop holding back. That's what they feared, the power they couldn't control. Suddenly, a low alarm echoed through the facility. Red lights flashed across the walls. Zira flinched. What's happening? Eli closed his eyes for a moment. They found us. The floor vibrated as drones began to swarm through the corridors, their lights cutting through the darkness. Metal wings whirred and mechanical voices shouted, Target E13 detected. Terminate on sight. Eli grabbed Zira's arm. Stay behind me. Energy crackled around him, his body glowing red again. As the first drone entered the room, he raised his hand, and the machine froze midair, crushed into scrap by invisible force. Another drone fired, but the energy bolt bent mid-flight, spiraling back toward it like a boomerang. Zira covered her ears as the explosion shook the room. Sparks flew everywhere. Eli, stop! She shouted. You'll bring the whole base down. But Eli didn't stop. His power surged higher, his veins glowing like fire. The air twisted with pressure and cracks formed in the walls. Then Zira did something she didn't understand. She ran to him and grabbed his hand. Eli, look at me! He turned, eyes blazing. Move! No, she said firmly. You said you didn't want this. Then prove it. Control it! Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Eli's breathing slowed. The glow faded slightly. The drones stopped moving, and all at once, then dropped to the ground like stones. Silence. Eli fell to his knees, gasping for breath. Zira knelt beside him. You okay? He nodded weakly. You shouldn't have done that, she smiled faintly. Then you'd be dead. You're welcome. For the first time, Eli almost smiled back. After a long silence, Zira looked around the ruined chamber. So, what now? We can't stay here. Eli stood slowly. No, but before we leave, there's something you need to see. He walked to a sealed door at the end of the chamber. With a wave of his hand, the lock disengaged. Inside was a small room filled with old computers and one large holographic screen. It flickered to life as they entered. On the screen appeared a map of the galaxy. Glowing red dots spread across dozens of systems. Zira frowned. "What are those?" Eli's voice was quiet. "Cryosites. Human vaults, just like this one." Her eyes widened. "You mean there are more?" "More humans?" Eli nodded. "Thousands. Maybe more." Zira stared at the screen in shock. "Eli, you could bring them all back." He looked at the glowing map for a long time. "I could," he said softly. "But if I do, the Council will start another war." Zira touched his arm gently. "Maybe this time the galaxy needs to remember what it did." Eli turned toward her, his eyes glowing faintly red again, not in anger but in determination. Far above, in the dark sky of Vetra Prime, a massive ship drifted silently. Inside, the Council watched the same scene through a hidden satellite feed. A cold voice spoke through the chamber. "Subject E13 has found the human vaults. Prepare the hunters, and send the purge fleet to Earth." The night sky over Vetra Prime burned with storm clouds. Lightning flashed through the floating city as alarms echoed across every sector. High above, ships of the Galactic Council moved into formation. Dark, silent, and ready for war. Down below, hidden deep in the forgotten ruins, Eli stood before a glowing map showing hundreds of red dots across the galaxy. Human cryovaults waiting in darkness. Zira Vel stood beside him, her heart heavy with confusion and fear. Each dot represented life. Each dot represented war. Zira took a step closer. "You can really wake them." "All of them?" Eli nodded slowly. His voice was calm but cold. "They've slept long enough. Humanity deserves to rise again." "But if you do this," Zira said quietly, "the Council will see it as war." "They already do," Eli replied. "They've been preparing for it since the day they burned Earth." Zira's throat tightened. "You want revenge," Eli turned to her. "I want truth. I want justice. And if revenge comes with it, so be it." He placed his hand over the control panel. Red light spread across the screen, connecting one dot to another, linking them in a pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. Zira watched as ancient human code filled the room, language she didn't understand, written in symbols long forgotten. Then a voice came from the computer. "Cryo Protocol Genesis. Command authorization required," Eli whispered. "Authorization E13. Unlock." The machine paused, scanning him. "Identity confirmed." "Awakening sequence ready." Zira stepped forward. "Eli, wait, are you sure about this?" Eli looked at the screen. His reflection glowed red in its light. "You saw what they did to us, Zira. They turned humanity into a memory." "I won't let that be our ending," Zira's voice trembled. "And what about the rest of the galaxy? Billions of innocent lives who had nothing to do with what happened." Eli hesitated. His eyes softened, just a little. "I don't want to destroy them," he said. "I want them to remember who we are." Before Zira could answer, the ground shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Eli looked up. "They're here." Outside, thunder wasn't thunder anymore, as it was the roar of engines. Council ships were descending, surrounding the old Earth ruins. Massive floodlights cut through the clouds. And among them, huge mechanical hunters with glowing white armor. Zira ran to the window. "They're sending the purge fleet." Eli's face hardened. "Then we move faster." He hit the command key. Awakening sequence initiated. The screen exploded with light. Across the galaxy, signals burst from old satellites, transmitting encrypted codes to hidden bases on forgotten worlds. One by one, the red dots on the map turned gold. Zira gasped. "You did it," Eli whispered. "They'll wake soon." The door behind them exploded open. Soldiers stormed in, their weapons charged. "Hands up!" shouted the lead officer. "Step away from the console." Eli stepped forward calmly. "You don't want to do this," the officer hesitated. "You're surrounded, human. Don't make it worse." Eli's voice lowered. "You already did." With a flash, energy surged from his body, forming a red shield that threw the soldiers back like leaves in a storm. Their weapons shattered, walls cracked, and lights flickered wildly. Zira shielded her face as dust filled the air. "Eli, stop. You'll bring the roof down." But Eli's power was different this time, more controlled. The red light around him pulsed steadily, almost like a heartbeat. When the smoke cleared, the soldiers were unconscious, not dead. Zira looked at him breathless. You spared them, Eli nodded. I told you, I'm not here to kill. They ran through the tunnels, escaping as explosions shook the ground. When they reached the surface, the horizon was burning red, ships firing, cities glowing, alarms blaring across Vetra Prime. In the chaos, Zira and Eli boarded a small abandoned shuttle. As the engines roared to life, Eli took the controls. Where are we going? Zira asked. Home, he said quietly. To Earth. Zira's eyes widened. Earth is dead. Eli's voice was calm. Then we'll see if death can wake again. Hours later, the shuttle broke through a layer of ash and silence. Before them hung a dark, broken planet, Earth. Half its surface was covered in glassy craters, the rest in lifeless oceans. But deep below the clouds, faint lights flickered, lights that weren't natural. Zira leaned forward. What is that? Eli smiled slightly. The heart of Genesis. The first vault. The true awakening. He guided the shuttle down through the storm. As they descended, ancient satellites activated one by one, tracking their signal. When they landed, the ground beneath them shimmered with strange metal symbols, human markings glowing faint gold. Eli stepped out, the wind whipping through his hair. Welcome to where it all began. They entered a massive structure half buried in the ground. It was quiet but not dead. Machines still hummed softly, powered by something unseen. In the center stood a huge glass chamber filled with hundreds of human figures, suspended in light. Zira stared in awe. So many. Eli placed his hand on the console. The first humans of the new age. The lights brightened one by one. The pods began to open. Steam hissed through the air. Zira's voice was a whisper. They're waking up. Eli nodded, his eyes filled with something between pride and sadness. They'll need guidance. They'll need truth. And what about you? Zira asked softly. Eli looked at the glowing chamber. Me? I'm already awake. Far above them, hidden among the clouds, council ships formed a blockade around Earth. Inside the flagship, the High Commander watched the planet through the viewport. He's activating them, said an officer. Then we proceed, the commander replied coldly. Prepare the Starbreaker. If humanity rises again, we end them before they begin. Back in the vault, Zira turned toward Eli. They're coming. We can't fight them all. Eli's voice was calm but determined. I don't need to fight all of them. I just need to protect this moment. He turned to her, his eyes glowing faint red. Zira, you once mocked me for being human, but now, I need you to help humanity live. Zira felt a lump in her throat. Why me? Because you still believe in something bigger than fear, Eli said. And that's what makes you different from them. The walls trembled as the first orbital strike hit the surface, shaking the ground. Eli looked up, then back at the awakening pods. Stay with them, he said. Guide them if I don't return. Zira grabbed his arm. Eli, what are you going to do? He smiled faintly. Remind the galaxy what happens when it tries to erase humanity. Then, without another word, he walked out into the burning light. The sky above Earth was burning again, just like the day it died. Flashes of red and blue lit up the clouds as the Galactic Council's fleet surrounded the planet. Hundreds of warships hovered like dark moons, their cannons glowing with energy strong enough to melt continents. Far below, in the ancient human vault, the newly awakened humans gasped their first breaths in centuries. Their eyes opened to a world they didn't know, a ruined Earth but still alive. And standing at the edge of the crater, facing the storm of ships above, was Eli. His eyes burned faint red in the dim light. His voice was calm. You took our sky once, he whispered. You won't take it again. Inside the vault, Ziravel moved quickly among the awakening humans. Some were weak, coughing, shaking. Others looked around in confusion. She tried to speak gently. You're safe. Please don't panic. You've been asleep for a long time. A man grabbed her arm. His voice was dry and rough. Who are you? Where's the council? Zira hesitated. The council is coming. Panic spread through the room like fire. But then the ground trembled and the air filled with a strange hum. Not fear this time, but power. Every pod, every machine, every light in the vault flickered red for a moment. Zira looked up. Eli. High above the vault, Eli stood on the cracked surface, wind tearing through his coat. The clouds parted, and from the sky descended the Starbreaker, the largest weapon in the galaxy. A ship so huge it could block out the sun. Its center glowed with pure white energy, a cannon capable of burning an entire planet. A voice echoed from the ship's comms, cold and merciless. E-13, you are a threat to universal peace. Surrender or Earth will be erased again. Eli raised his head. Then you've already chosen. From his palm, red light began to spread, flowing across the ground like fire through veins. The Earth itself responded. Metal structures hidden deep underground began to rise, breaking through rock and dust. Massive pillars formed around him. The old Earth defense grid, built long before the fall of humanity. Zyra ran outside just in time to see it. Her breath caught. What are you doing? Eli didn't look at her, finishing what my ancestors started. The sky darkened as the pillars glowed red and gold. Beams of ancient energy shot upward, striking the first line of council ships. In seconds, half the fleet vanished in explosions that lit up the stratosphere. Inside the Starbreaker, alarms screamed. Unknown weapon detected. It's using planetary energy signatures. Impossible. Earth should be dead. The High Commander gritted his teeth. Then let's make sure it dies for real. Fire! The Starbreaker's core ignited, a sun forming within its heart. A beam of blinding light burst downward, tearing through the sky toward Earth. Zyra screamed, Eli! But Eli didn't move. He lifted his hand, his body surrounded by a field of red energy that bent the light itself. The Starbreaker's beam hit him and stopped. The ground cracked, fire raged, and the air turned white-hot, but Eli stood firm. His voice echoed across the world. You burned our home once. Never again. With a roar, he pushed the energy back. The light bent, reversed, and surged upward, slamming into the Starbreaker. The explosion that followed lit up the galaxy. For a long moment, everything was silent. Zyra fell to her knees, shielding her face as debris rained from the sky. When the light faded, she looked up and gasped. Half the Starbreaker was gone. The other half drifted burning into the upper atmosphere, but Eli was gone too. Eli, she shouted, running across the smoking ground. Eli, where are you? She found him a few meters away, kneeling in the dust. His body trembled, energy fading from his eyes. Blood ran down his arm, glowing faintly red. Zyra knelt beside him. You did it. You stopped them. Eli's breathing was slow. No, not yet. They'll send more. She grabbed his hand. You can't fight the whole galaxy. Eli looked at her, calm, tired, but unbroken. Then maybe the galaxy needs to remember what happens when you corner a human. Above them, surviving council ships regrouped. A new voice echoed through their comms, older, colder. Deploy the purifiers. Earth must not rise again. Hundreds of dark pods fell from orbit, screaming through the atmosphere like black meteors. When they hit the ground, they cracked open, revealing tall machines with glowing white eyes, humanoid but soulless. Zyra stared. What are those? Eli stood slowly. Purge units, machines built from human DNA, twisted copies of us. Zyra's eyes widened. They used humans? Eli nodded grimly. They turned our dead into their soldiers. The purifiers marched forward, their metal feet shaking the ground. Zyra raised a weapon she'd found, firing desperately, but the shots bounced off their armor. Eli stepped forward, power sparking from his hands. Get the survivors inside the vault, he said. Now, Zyra hesitated. You can't take them all. He gave her a faint smile. I don't have to. I just have to remind them who they're fighting. She wanted to argue, but one look in his eyes stopped her. Zyra ran back to the vault, shouting, Everyone move! Underground now! The humans followed, frightened but inspired by the sound of Eli's power thundering above. Outside, the purifiers surrounded him. Their leader stepped forward, face half metal, half human. Its voice was hollow. E-13, you are an error of evolution. Eli's eyes glowed brighter. Maybe. But so were you. He raised his hand, and the ground erupted. Energy shot upward, forming a wave that tore through the enemy ranks. Metal melted, sparks flew, and for a moment it looked like the humans might win. But then a giant shadow fell across the battlefield. From the sky descended another ship, larger than any before. It bore the symbol of the Council Prime. Zira watched from the vault entrance as the ship's core began to glow. Her heart pounded. No, not another starbreaker. Eli looked up at the light and whispered, "Then it ends here." He spread his arms wide, his entire body ignited with energy, brighter than ever before. For 1 second, the air went silent. Then Eli vanished in a burst of light that swallowed everything. When the brightness faded, the sky was empty, the ships were gone. The purifiers were silent. Only the wind moved across the broken earth. Zira stood alone in the ruins, her face streaked with dust and tears. She whispered into the wind, "Eli, what did you do?" The answer came not from the sky but from the ground, a low hum. The earth itself glowed faint red, veins of light spreading across continents, and far in the distance the dormant human cities began to wake. Zira's eyes widened. He hadn't just destroyed the fleet. He had awakened the planet. High above, in the silent orbit of Earth, the last Council ship recorded one final message before its systems failed. Warning: Earth's core is active. Unknown energy source detected. Classification: humanity, reborn. The world was quiet again. No warships. No thunder. No screaming skies. Only the wind, soft and endless, was moving through the ruins of old Earth. Ash fell like snow, glowing faint red in the faint morning light. The ground still shimmered with traces of energy, reminders of the man who had stood against the galaxy. Eli was gone, and Zira Vel stood where he had fallen. For hours she hadn't moved. She just stared at the horizon, where light still flickered across the clouds. Her hands were covered in dust and blood, not her own. All around her the newly awakened humans were gathering, quiet and afraid. They looked at her not as an alien anymore, but as something else. The last person who had seen him. One of them, a young woman with silver eyes, stepped closer. "Was he real?" she asked softly. Zira nodded. "More real than anyone I've ever known." The woman looked at the red glow still spreading across the land. "And now he's gone?" Zira shook her head slowly. "No, not gone. Just changed." Deep below the surface, the Earth's core pulsed with strange rhythm. Not mechanical, not natural. Alive. Every tremor felt like a heartbeat. Every flicker of light whispered the same word: Eli. Zira watched the light crawl across the cracked earth like veins spreading through a body. She could feel it in her chest, warmth, calm, and something deeper, purpose. He had become part of the planet. He had given everything to awaken humanity, and now Earth itself carried his strength. By nightfall, the stars appeared, brighter than they had in centuries. But they weren't alone. Tiny shapes shimmered in the sky. Ships. Not alien warships this time, but old human vessels rising from underground hangars activated by Eli's final surge of power. Zira stepped outside the vault and looked up. For the first time, the humans who had just awoken saw their own sky, not as slaves or survivors, but as a people reborn. One of the men turned to her.
"He planned this, didn't he?"
"Yes," Zira said quietly. "Every step." That night, Zira found herself in the old control room of the vault. Screens flickered to life as she touched the console. And then a voice, calm, familiar, human. "If you're hearing this," it said, "then the war is over." Zira's breath caught. "Eli..." The screen showed his face, and not in real time, but a message he had recorded before the final battle. His expression was calm, even peaceful. "I knew the council would come. I knew they'd never stop. So I left something behind, not just my power, but a memory. A spark for those who'll rise after me." He paused, looking directly into the camera. Humanity was never about strength or weapons. It was about the will to stand back up no matter how many times we're erased. Zira's eyes filled with tears. "You stubborn fool." The message continued. "Zira, if you survived, take care of them. They'll need a voice. Someone to remind them we're more than what the galaxy thinks. Tell them I wasn't the last human. Tell them I was the first of the new ones." The screen flickered, and the last thing he said was soft, almost like a whisper. "Ashes don't die, Zira, they rise." Then the message ended. The next morning, Earth began to change. Forests started to bloom where nothing had grown in centuries. The air became lighter, cleaner. Rivers long dried up began to flow again. It was as if the planet itself was waking, breathing for the first time in ages. Zira walked through the reborn fields, surrounded by the survivors, humans who looked at her with trust, not fear. They had started building shelters, repairing old machines, learning again. She smiled faintly. He wanted this, not revenge, renewal. A voice behind her said, he wanted hope. Zira turned. It was the same silver-eyed woman. She was holding a small device glowing red. What is that? Zira asked. The woman handed it to her. We found it in the vault. It's coded to your DNA. Zira pressed the device. A small hologram appeared and a single symbol glowing red, the mark of humanity. And below it Eli's voice, faint, almost like a memory in the wind. For those who come after, remember who you are. Weeks passed. The galaxy changed. The Council's communication networks went silent. Their fleets stopped returning. Rumors spread through the stars. Whispers of a planet that had risen from the ashes. A world reborn under a red sky. A word carried on every frequency. Humans, some feared it. Some doubted it. But some, those who had lived under the Council's rule, began to hope. Months later, Zira stood on a high cliff overlooking the new city being built near the ruins of the old. Humans worked together, laughing, arguing, rebuilding. The air was full of noise, life, and promise. She smiled sadly. You'd like this, Eli, she said quietly. It's messy, loud, and full of mistakes, just like us. A soft breeze brushed past her face. For a moment, she thought she heard a voice, warm and familiar, whisper in the wind. Exactly how it should be. Zira closed her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she was smiling now. That night, the stars above Earth shifted, forming a new pattern. The constellation glowed faint red, shaped like a rising flame. People called it the Guardian Star. They said it appeared every night since the war ended. And when children asked who it was, Zira always answered softly, That's Eli, the man who showed the galaxy that humans never die. They just rise again.